All right, now let's get to number 6. Have you recreated another Mozart concerto?
I think this one might be similar to something by Corelli.
Corelli. I don't have that much ball knowledge of the Baroque era, but we'll see. All right. Now we need to assign an instrument to this. Yes. So in that case, it's go to about 16 and a bit minutes, and if you haven't gotten there yet. So you decided that in and amongst Corelli, you'd like to sprinkle in a bit of Scriabin-esque polyrhythms.
Oh, really?
Like the kind of vaguely 4/3. The trills have a funny way of like bouncing off of each other. It reminds me of Vivaldi vaguely, and if you'd write like a double violin concerto or something, it would feel like the kind of thing where you have like the first violin playing a tone and then like the second violin repeating in a like tenor or alto-y register. What's the rationale behind like because they're not even trills, right? They
They're supposed to be like just trills, not like the type of trills that you'd have like generated from MuseScore, but like more human.
Oh no, yeah, of course, absolutely full points for a better trill than just what would be automatically generated by MIDI. At least for that period, is it natural that the note density of the trill increases just before, like in the last quarter or eighth of a beat?
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. It like starts slow and then it speeds up. That's just kind of my impression of what a lot of performers play trills.
Especially with these kind of pieces, it appears that they're designed to bounce between two or three very specific textures. And the only thing that changes is like a modulation or the progression or like the direction by which you realize it. So what you did is you doubled the original Partimento.
Yeah, because it's trying to emulate like a basso continuo part.
Yeah, I don't know. I can imagine that it might sound fine and like you wrote it as such for like a quintet.
I mean, the parts are supposed to be like flexible. It's kind of like you have like a Vivaldi score, right? But when you listen to like recordings of it, you might hear a Fiorbo harpsichord or
Yeah, at least when it's all emulated on the same instrument. Like when you assemble this, do you designate different instruments to each part?
like for parts 1 through 4. So 1 is the first violin, 2 is second violin, 3 is viola, and then 4 is cello. And then 5 would be a double bass part.
No, that figures, yeah. Because like when they're all put onto one instrument, the doubled bass is a bit dry and perhaps a bit unimaginative. But if it serves purely as like a function to reinforce the bass and have it actually shine through over the three upper parts, then I guess it makes sense.
Rarely am I going to have a double bass part 2 do anything other than like support the cello part.
Yeah, I think that is standard practice. Unlike a piano, like if you're purely thinking pianistic writing, you're like, okay, maybe do I do anything other than an octave at any point here? But no, I get how with like a specific function that it makes sense. I do notice the way that like the way you hold the length of some of the notes, especially in string instruments, would result in like a lot of major and minor seconds going on. Yeah, I do wonder if that would not create a bit too much dissonance. In the score, there's also no dynamics at all, so you couldn't like, at least in playback on a MIDI interface, you wouldn't be able to actually have the note kind of, diminish in any way. You'd have like the minor major second just hitting at full blast compared to the note that's been like going on. I'm not sure how great that would be.
I think I would just leave that sort of thing to the performer.
Yeah, there's probably adjust that in like rehearsal or like maybe let's not put so much pressure on the bow at this part.
That's just kind of the thing with a lot of Baroque music. Like, it's all dependent on the performers to work out most of the technicalities.
Or improvise parts or embellish it or whatever, right? Yeah. I do like that there is a clear difference in texture, like the different parts have different feels to it. There is dialogue between like a first and second violin kind of thing, which is nice. And there's like the third part is also kind of cool because it gives additional dimension. Because like if the first two violins kind of in charge of like main melody and like accompaniment if you want, then you've got like the cello and bass line, then you've got like a third little viola effectively just to kind of give a bit more depth or punch. It's quite cool. I think this is why this kind of format works. It's a good balance between having like fresh top lines and them not just hanging over a very thin and kind of unsubstantive bass line. I think MIDI playback isn't doing you the most favors here, admittedly, but I can see how human interpretation could overcome most of like the bones to pick that I would have here.
Any comments on like various sequences or melodic lines or
Oh, my instrument is disconnected because I tried to get a cello on.
oh
So
oh
yeah, no, because yes, I mean that also then booted the initial instrument I had. So
you'd have to like set up a whole like string quartet inside of Contact.
yeah, but I opted for just like a cello might cover the whole range technically.
You could set up a viola and cello.
Viola wouldn't go that low, would it?
Viola can go down to like a E, below middle C.
Yeah, the little sequence between like 39 and 32 is fun. Even if not like the most innovative and interesting, it's just pleasant, fun, simple. And then I do like how you alter between like third runs of like, because sometimes you'll use eighth notes and then sometimes you'll use 16th notes. Like you add dynamicism in the sense that it's not the same predictable pattern going into a new bar.
Yeah.
That's quite cool. Saw that it's coherent would probably benefit from an actual realization by like a string quintet to maybe grasp some of the interplay between the instruments and read out as it would maybe be written for. But apart from that, I think it's decent. It's solid.